Okay, so this is the Panasonic Lumix S9, and it's a full-frame compact camera body, and I think it has the potential to rival the Fujifilm X100VI. Now, throughout the video, I'm going to go over kind of my experience going over with this camera. I took it to New York City, and I feel like there's a lot of sentiment and also concerns about this camera as well too. So let's go over that right now. Okay, so there's 3 reasons why I chose this camera over all the other ones, right? There are plenty of reasons to go with Sony. I have a Sony a7R5 that I'm filming with right now, but I chose this camera mainly because it's so compact that I could take it almost anywhere. I had a crossbody that I brought to New York City, and you'll see pictures of that pretty soon. And so that was the first reason. The second reason is that it has custom LUTs. Fujifilm has its own custom recipes, which is really fun to have, but I feel like custom LUTs is a better alternative in this case because I can upload almost anything. And number 3 is that I could use this for personal shoots and make really my editing workflow pretty fast. So those are the 3 things that kind of aspired to get when getting this camera. Another thing I kind of want to highlight is that it's full frame, not APS-C. The Fujifilm X100VI is APS-C. It does have an f2 lens, which really helps it in low light, but I want to kind of make a note here. APS-C cameras let in less light than full frame cameras. So not only are APS-C cameras cropped, so the Fujifilm has a crop factor as well of 1.6 times, but it also has a low light cap or crop as well. And so when you see f2 on the lens, it's not really meaning f2. It means it's an equivalent of f2.8, right? So you have to also double the aperture of an APS-C camera as well. Well, the Lumix actually helps a lot because it's a full frame camera and you have to worry about the conversion a lot less, and it'll take great low light pictures. Of course, there's technical tests out there. You guys can look those up, but I kind of want to go over, my personal experience with the camera itself. So let's talk about LUTs. I think it's a great addition to, in any camera to have your own custom LUTs. You can see the colors, you can see the shadows and the details before you take the image itself. I feel like that's a great addition. However, when you realize that I want to make more granular adjustments to each image, it kind of makes it a moot point because sometimes you realize that some colors don't work in the composition and you have to change the LUT and do a whole bunch of other things to kind of get the right picture that you want to send out to Instagram or on a website or your portfolio. And I realized that when you're importing the custom LUTs, you're only importing the color profile itself. So you're not importing texture, clarity, dehaze, all these things that really do matter in an image. Also cropping as well. So you do have to go back and crop those images if you want a right composition, because sometimes you don't get it right in camera. And another thing is that exposure matters. So when you have the LUTs on, you can't really see what you're exposing for because the colors are different, right? And sometimes it's better to just, shoot in RAW and, control the exposure later. And so when you're doing this exposure changes, you have to go into Lightroom anyway. So it kind of makes it redundant. And I felt like LUTs were great just to see what you're doing before, but at the end of the day, I still ended up going back to Lightroom in the first place. So that's something I had to consider as well. Since custom LUTs are so great, I thought that wouldn't matter, and let's go to New York City and test out a lot of the images. But I found out a really, really, really annoying quirk by the S9 pretty fast. On the Panasonic Lumix S9, when you're clicking the exposure button and you're half pressing the shutter, you want it to lock focus, or you're just, focusing on one part of the subject. And you're trying to get the right composition, but there's a firmware bug, or it's a feature that Lumix has not fixed yet. Sorry, Panasonic hasn't fixed yet. And what it is that the camera auto-corrects to the neutral exposure rather than keeping it the exposure that you set. So for example, if it's too dark, right, and you're exposing for the subject itself, so you crank up the ISO and you're exposing the subject, what it'll do is that it wouldn't read that as something that you intended. It'll just correct back to a neutral exposure, which is super annoying when you're half pressing the shutter button, because then you don't know what you're composing for because you can't see anything. And so not even in low light, but in highlights too, when it's super bright outside and you really want to just expose for the sky, or you shoot underexposed, you can't do that, because whenever you press the half shutter, it really just, it's such a jarring experience, and it goes, the viewfinder goes back to this neutral exposure setting, and you can't see what you're doing. And that's, I think, one of the biggest deal breakers when it comes to just exposing your images, and composing your images as well. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So let's talk about a couple more things, quirks about the Panasonic Lumix S9. So one of the quirks that I've realized is that there is no hot shoe. There is only a cold shoe on it, and so you can't use flashes, which is the biggest miss. I don't know why they decided to go with the cold shoe instead of a hot shoe, but apparently it is. And you can't use flashes on top of it, or connect any external mics that would use a hot shoe. So there's a cold shoe on there, so that's a bummer. Another thing is that there's no mechanical shutter. It's an electronic shutter, which is probably why there's no flash. And so that's something we have to really consider when you're buying a camera of this. It's like $1,600. It's not something like light, like $900 or something like that. And that's really important. And so I think these are really big downsides when it comes to the Panasonic Lumix S9, but those are some things that I wanted to point out as well. So let's talk about my trip to New York City. I feel like it was great. The Panasonic's camera was amazing. Actually lasted the whole day without to charge it at all. And that's awesome, because I don't need to carry an extra battery with me. I did keep an external battery just for my phone or whatnot, and it did take USB-C. So if you guys have an external battery just to charge real quick, I really highly recommend bringing that on trip as well. Another thing that kind of that haunted me is the lack of an EVF. So when you're using a screen in broad daylight, it's hard to see what you're looking at. Again, another theme of this camera is that it's hard to see what you're doing with the constant preview off in the settings menu, on top of the fact that the preview changes, right, because of that setting. There is no EVF as well, and on top of that, it's really hard to know when you took a picture in the first place, because it's a electronic shutter, not a mechanical shutter. It makes it really jarring. So New York City, how was it? Amazing, beautiful. There's a lot of moments of street photography that you can take, and I feel like there's a lot of moments I missed as well with the Lumix, mainly because you don't know what you're doing when you're taking the photo. First of all, that firmware bug I talked earlier about reared its ugly head, obviously, because it's still there. I did a firmware upgrade. If anybody knows how to fix it, let me know. But the constant preview was extremely annoying, and the constant exposure adjustments when you're half clicking the shutter was super annoying as well. Another thing I want to talk about is that there's no EVF, so you don't know what you're looking into, and since it's in broad daylight, the screen is so dim, it's hard to see what you're composing before you take an image. So I really highly recommend increasing the monitor brightness, and that's another thing that kind of annoyed me as well. And so the battery life, however, was amazing. The battery kept going on for the entire day. Did not need a change of battery, but I did have an external charger, so I highly recommend bringing that just in case your phone dies or your camera dies after a long day of use. But it didn't die on me, which is great. I also do want to talk about the grip. I realize there's no front grip in the front, and everyone's kind of freaking out about it. I didn't have too big an issue. I mainly used the back grip to take my images, and it was fine. I didn't have any problem, mainly because of the lens I paired with the Lumix S9, and that is the Sigma 35mm contemporary DGGN lens. And it's light, it's compact, and it is slightly more longer in width compared to the Fujifilm X100VI, but it was great. And as a full frame camera, I wasn't complaining, and the images were great. I don't know about the really minute details about the lens, about like how it was in the corners or whatever, but I didn't see anything, as you can see within these images. It was great, autofocus was great, and it didn't seem like I was missing too many images due to autofocus. I was mainly missing a lot of images due to the fact that I couldn't see anything when using the camera. So there's that. Overall, do I think this is a camera that has beaten the Fujifilm X100VI? No. However, if you are in that really niche scenario where you want custom LUTs during your pictures and you feel like it's a great idea and you want a compact camera just for travel, I feel like it's a great option. You know, I'm more of a pro user, and so I need more of the things in Lightroom in order to post my pictures. But if you find LUTs that you find great, you can basically just take the picture, import it to your phone, and you're done. You can post it on Instagram. So I feel like, you know, in that sense, it really does feel like it's a Fujifilm X100VI alternative. Now, I haven't gotten the Fujifilm X100VI yet. That's a story for another day. And when that does come in, I can, you know, compare it to the Fujifilm X-T50 that I had earlier, and now this camera that I now have to return because I don't want to keep it, because I thought it would save me a lot of time, but it ended up not saving me any time at all because there was such a learning curve, and that firmware bug really pisses me off. Now, what's coming up in the future? DJI is actually coming out with its own camera. It hasn't been announced yet. There's rumors that it's happening, and I kind of want to see what they have to offer. And they actually use L-mount lenses, so I'm going to keep my lens and sell the camera body, or sorry, return the camera body back to Panasonic, and we shall see what that camera body entails. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was informative. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. In the future, I do have the 85mm GM2 from Sony. That review is coming out soon, and also a POV of me taking some surfing pictures as well. So if you enjoyed it, rate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.